Hello and welcome to the Golden Playbook. Today we are going to recap every game from the first Sunday of the NFL football season. We are going to get our fantasy takeaways, potential waiver wire ads, and guys that just seem like they are droppable, going to have no role on their team. Let's first start with the Tampa Bay Bucks versus the Atlanta Falcons. A 23-20 victory by the Bucks. Should have been an OT thriller, but Young-Ho Koo really threw this game away. Let's head to the box score, see what we can take away, as well as what we saw with our own eyes watching the game. On the Bucs side, we'll start with them. They were the victors. Baker Mayfield, didn't look great. I'll be honest with you. 17 of 32 is obviously not very solid. Did kind of save his fantasy day with the 3 passing touchdowns. 2 of them going to Emeka Egbuka. So obviously amazing to see. If you're an Egbuka owner, looks like the guy is an absolute stud until Godwin comes back, which sounds like it's going to be a while. Egbuka is a must start for me. Mike Evans, didn't get the touchdown, so didn't fully come home fantasy-wise, but he did get 8 targets, so you're happy to see that there. And then really the rest of the receiving options for Tampa Bay, non-existent in this one. Bucky Irving, kind of slow to be honest, does get the receiving touchdown, kind of takes him home a little bit. But didn't look very good on the ground. Not a lot of holes for him to run through. But his usage was definitely encouraging. He has a strong grip on that running back room, so it sounds like he is going to be the RB1 indefinitely. Rachaad White is just going to come in to spell him every once in a while. And listen, this was a bad week to be a high-end wide receiver. Just about everyone except for Puka Nacua did not pay up their draft price, at least so far in week 1. And fantasy scores were down overall, kind of across the league. There was not a 30-point position scorer this week. So things are going to be looking up, trust me. If you're worried about your guys, do not stress about it too much, unless there was some obvious reason to do so. On the Falcons side of things, Penix looked decent. They couldn't get anything going on the ground. As you can see, neither Algier nor B-Rob could get, literally anything going, which is a little bit of a worry because we knew there's going to be some question marks at the O-line position for the Falcons. They lost multiple pieces in the offseason, and it obviously showed. However, Bijan obviously came through in the air, had the long 50-yard touchdown, which really saved the day, but he was very involved. 7 targets. You love to see that for Bijan Robinson. And then Drake London, you love to see the 15 targets. What you don't love to see is he left this game with a shoulder sprain. Considered day-to-day. Hopefully it is not too serious. Obviously, you love the target share. Drake London could be, the wide receiver 1 overall if he continues to get that target share. Didn't turn it into much in this particular game, but I think big things are on the horizon for Mr. Drake London. And then a surprise decent game out of Kyle Pitts. You will always take that. 8 targets, which is, very encouraging. Turned it into 7 for 59. Ray McCloud, I think if Drake London misses any time, Ray McCloud's a great pickup for a week, can fill in, would serve as the wide receiver 1, even though, he's definitely not a wide receiver 1. But if Drake London happens to miss next week, Ray McCloud is a great pickup option. Honestly, this game could have had way more fireworks. Koo missing that field goal to take it to overtime, we could have got more value out of this game. So curse you, Young-Ho Koo. Next, we'll head to Arizona and New Orleans, a 20-13 victory for the Cardinals. Kyler Murray looked just about as mid as he has in previous seasons. Gets 2 passing touchdowns, takes 5 sacks against the New Orleans defense that we aren't expecting to be very good. As far as the receiving options, it is going to be the Marv and Trey McBride show, like we kind of thought. Marv gets 5 for 71 and a touchdown, so very encouraging to see from him. Trey McBride, of course, leads the league. Trey McBride, of course, leads the team in targets with 9, only turns it into 6 for 61, but, encouraging usage that will kind of continue what he did at the end of last season for Trey McBride. As far as on the ground, running backs really could not get it going this week. For the most part, there's a few exceptions. But James Conner, I thought this was going to be a smash matchup for him. Obviously didn't turn it into much. Did get the little receiving touchdown, kind of dump down pass. So again, like Bucky Irving, saved his day with the receiving touchdown, but just could not get it going on the ground for James Conner. And listen, it looks like Trey Benson is going to get a little bit more involved than he did last season. So that is definitely something to keep an eye out. I think James Conner is a fine start as long as the matchup is good moving forward. Just something to keep an eye out there. On the New Orleans side of things, Spencer Rattler, he didn't look horrible, all right? He's going to be able to provide some fantasy floor for guys like Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson. It's just the guys like Rashid Shaheed who you're going to have to see. Probably going to be spike weeks. You're going to have to figure out when they are. It's going to be pretty tough to kind of predict when a Rashid Shaheed is going to go off. However, the 9 targets is very encouraging to see for him. As for Olave, same deal. 13 targets, love to see it. Just couldn't turn it into much. 7 for 54. And, a decent PPR day, but any other format, you're not loving it. And then Juwan Johnson, 11 targets, 8 for 76. Kind of Spencer Rattler's go-to guy over the middle. I think Johnson's definitely a pick-upable tight end. Say you have Evan Ingram, who looks like he got injured, or someone of that caliber. Juwan Johnson seems like a fine pickup, probably a safe floor kind of guy. On the ground game, definitely Kamara's backfield still. Kendre Miller showed a little buzz, but Kamara is just an absolute dog. Got the rushing score. Surprised he was not used and targeted more in the passing game. I don't know if that's kind of courtesy of Kellen Moore's offense, but would have loved to see him used more in the passing game, of course. But solid game from Mr. Alvin Kamara. No real takeaways except Juwan Johnson, definitely pick-upable for the time being. And we'll head to the absolute beatdown by the Indianapolis Colts on the Miami Dolphins, 33-8 ball game. And Daniel Jones looks like your MVP so far this season. Incredible stuff out of Danny Dimes. 272 passing yards, a passing touchdown, 2 more touchdowns on the ground. This guy was outrageous against a Miami team that looked absolutely dismal. I will say DJ Giddens ended up getting 12 carries, looked decent with them. I'm assuming it was mostly due to a blowout. I haven't heard any injury news on Jonathan Taylor, but Jonathan Taylor had all of the first half snaps, so that was very encouraging to see as long as he didn't pick up an injury. 18 for 71, obviously in a 33-8 game, you expect more out of Jonathan Taylor, but Danny Dimes was just doing it. He vultured a couple of the touchdowns, was doing it in the air. So encouraging to see the usage with Jonathan Taylor. Ultimately, it didn't come home, and that was kind of the theme for most of the weekend for a lot of guys. As for the receiving game, very encouraged to see if you are Michael Pittman or Tyler Warren owners. Seems like they are going to be the main guys in this offense. 6 for 80 and a touchdown for Pitty. Tyler Warren, 7 for 76, and they lead the teams in targets with 8 and 9 respectively. Listen, kind of a stinker if you're Josh Downs. I know everyone was high on the Josh Downs train. Perhaps Michael Pittman is going to be that guy early in the season with Tyler Warren getting those over the middle of the targets. I'm sure kind of things will change up. Each guy will get their share. But as of now, it is the Pittman and Warren show. I'd be very excited to start Warren week in, week out, especially in a PPR. And then Michael Pittman seems like a startable guy. As for the rest of them, I am not starting Pierce, Downs, Mitchell, any of that until I see more. Daniel Dimes, if you're in a super flex league or you're struggling at quarterback, which you shouldn't be yet, but if you are, depending on matchup, I think Daniel Jones is startable. Crazy to say. As for the Miami side, full panic button, hit it. If you have any Miami passing options or rushing options for that matter, I'm going to be a little nervous. Tua looked absolutely god-awful. Tyreek, frustrated on the sidelines. Obviously, they couldn't get anything going. I think Tyreek still has it, but just not in this offense. Waddle got banged up. Achane came home with the receiving score like he always does. But listen, Achane looked fine off the calf injury, so that's the 1+ here. But everyone looked like doo-doo. I'm a little worried Achane might be the only valuable piece in this offense, and it might be like garbage time, dump downs to him. So I am definitely wary of the Miami Dolphins. Easy to overreact after this really dismal week 1. So we'll see, how they look next week. But if it looks more of the same, it is going to be real bad in Miami this season. And we'll move on to the Raiders-Patriots, a 20-13 victory for your Las Vegas Raiders. And the league high passer this week, Mr. Geno Smith, 362 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. He looked pretty solid, like I thought he might. Obviously, the top targets being Brock Bowers, Jakobi Meyers, guys I've been high on all summer. Unfortunately, Brock Bowers did leave the game with a knee injury. It is thought to be not so serious like an ACL, hopefully just an MCL sprain, but we have not heard back yet. So hopefully he is okay. But Jakobi Meyers leading the team, 10 targets, 8 for 97. Obviously, you love to see it. I've been high on him pretty much all summer. So good things to see for Bowers and Meyers owners. A lot of the ancillary pieces got some work. I think Michael Mayer might be an interesting pickup if Bowers is out for a few weeks. He had 4 for 38, even with Bowers being there, played a bit of the snaps. On the ground game, it is the Ashton Jeanty show. Of course, it didn't turn into much, 19 carries for 38 yards, but that O-line was just not creating much of a push. He looked really good in the first half, in my opinion, when I went back and watched that game. He was kind of explosive, hitting the holes hard. And then in that second half, their O-line just kind of crumbled and fell apart. Geno was sacked 4 times. Jeanty was getting hit behind the line every time. So I kind of take this with a grain of salt. I think Jeanty is still the guy that we saw coming out of Boise State. And once we get a little bit easier of a matchup, of course, New England's defense was always going to be tough. I think Ashton Jeanty will kind of show us what he's made of. On to the New England side of things. Drake May, I'd say he looked okay. Nothing spectacular. A surprise 6 for 103 out of Kayshon Boutte. Definitely a little bit surprising. But the guys we were expecting to get some volume did as well. Hunter Henry, 8 targets, turned it into 4 for 66. And then Diggs, 7 targets. And then what you do like to see is Henderson getting involved in the passing game quite a lot. 6 targets, caught all of them, only 24 yards. But very encouraging to see that work in the passing game. As far as on the ground, no one really got it going. Henderson looked the best by a mile. Ramondre, they're slowly going to phase Ramondre out. He just did not look explosive. I know he's that bruiser, kind of veteran force, but Henderson is just way too explosive to leave out of this offense. So I expect Henderson's usage to continue to increase week in and week out. I think Henderson's going to be big down the stretch. So definitely hold on to Henderson. I know it didn't happen exactly for you week 1, but hold on to him. Moving on to the game that everyone expected to be a shootout, the Pittsburgh Steelers, New York Jets, a 34-32 high-scoring affair like we all predicted, right? Starting with the Steelers side of things, Aaron Rodgers might still have it, at least when he's going against his former team. 244 yards, 4 touchdowns. Good stuff out of him. DK Metcalf being the highest targeted guy, as we expected. Only turned it into 4 for 83, but I think big things on the horizon for him. Calvin Austin, a nice little 4 for 70 and a touchdown. Seems like he's the clear-cut wide receiver 2 in this offense. So I think Calvin Austin is definitely worth rostering. I would need to see it one more time to kind of put him into my starting lineup per se. Definitely the clear wide receiver 2 here. I think Jonnu Smith, his 6 targets, ended up getting a touchdown, but I think Jonnu Smith is interesting. Obviously not going to be near as valuable as he was last season in that Miami offense, but I think he is definitely rosterable for now if you kind of get into a tight end pickle. On the ground game, kind of a sad state of affairs. Jaylen Warren is just not, that guy. They gave him 11 carries, only turned it into 37 yards. Kenny Gainwell, highly used, only 7 for 19, but definitely used a lot there and in the receiving game. And Caleb Johnson was a distant RB3. So honestly, in 10-team leagues, kind of shallow leagues, I wouldn't mind dropping Caleb Johnson at this point. I think his opportunities will definitely increase as the season goes on, just because none of these guys are really seizing the opportunity. But definitely seems like a running game that is not going to be too effective. But if you need to drop Caleb Johnson to pick up one of these young guys, maybe like Marquise Brown from Friday night, definitely wouldn't blame you. I don't think his time is coming very soon, especially with the reports out of the summer. Doesn't feel like Caleb Johnson's close. So if you need to drop him, you're in a shallow league, 10-team league, I would not blame you whatsoever. To the New York Jets side of things, Justin Fields actually looked pretty solid. 218 and a touchdown through the air, 48 and 2 more scores on the ground. He and Daniel Dimes are your, top quarterbacks of the week, which is obviously crazy to say. And then we have to admit, Breece Hall looked very good. looked explosive again. Perhaps he was, battling something like an injury last season, but he looked like a different beast from a couple of years ago at this point. So Breece Hall looked amazing, got the 19 carries. Braylon Allen looked horrible, got the goal line touchdown. I don't think Braylon Allen's going to get a ton of run going forward. Isaiah Davis played some 2-minute, so that's definitely something to keep an eye on, some third down work. But Breece Hall is absolutely the alpha dog in this backfield. Had 2 for 38 in the air as well. So love what we saw out of Breece Hall. Garrett Wilson, 7 for 95 and a touchdown on 9 targets. We know Justin Fields loves to pepper his wide receiver one, especially when it's a former college teammate who he knows and has that rapport with. I think not every game is going to look like this for Garrett Wilson. Obviously, they're not going to score 32 points every week, but I'm a little bit more optimistic about Garrett Wilson after this game than going into it. That's for damn sure. At this point, no other receiving options are rosterable for the New York Jets. Next, we'll hit the Commanders, New York Giants, 21-6 victory by the Commanders. Kind of a snoozy game, to be honest. The New York just could not get any pushback for the Commanders. Jaden looked good, kind of did his thing. 233 for a touchdown, another 68 yards on the ground. So he looked very solid. Debo served as the wide receiver one. With Terry missing so much time during the summer, we thought, Debo might get a little extra work. Had the rushing touchdown as well. So very solid game for Debo and definitely a sleepy game for Terry McLaurin. But you're kind of expecting the slow start from a guy who missed a lot of camp with the holdout. Ertz ends up coming home with the touchdown. Otherwise, not very exciting. Did earn, the second most targets on the team. They just didn't have to pass the ball very much. New York was not pushing back at all. But the exciting things, Bill Krosky Merritt looked absolutely fantastic. Ripped off a 42-yarder, has a touchdown score, 10 for 82 and a touchdown. He's going to be their RB1 in no time, you guys. Eckler, old, no explosiveness left. And Jeremy McNichols, let's be honest, is just a special teamer. Gonna, maybe get a couple carries like he did in this one. But Bill Krosky Merritt, if he is not owned for some reason in your league, absolutely scoop him up. He is going to be the RB1 in no time. He is going to see his work continue to increase. So if he's available, pick him up. If you have him, congrats. He's going to be startable moving forward, no question about it. As far as the New York side, Russ looked absolutely horrendous. That offensive line was not really doing him favors. With that said, he did not look good whatsoever. Malik Neighbors unfortunately felt Russ's poor play with his 5 for 71, but he earned 12 targets. So like I said, these top tier guys, although it didn't feel very good having the low score, the opportunity is there. We're going to be calling for Jackson Dart any minute. I think if Jackson Dart gets in for the New York Giants, Malik Neighbors' value is going to skyrocket. Dart is just going to sling him the rock. So Malik Neighbors, encouraging 12 targets, didn't turn into much. Wan'Dale Robinson, the clear-cut number 2 in this team, 8 targets, 6 for 55, will be a PPR fill-in at some point. His spike games are not going to really happen for him. He's going to be a floor guy for sure. As far as the running game, another team that could not get it going whatsoever. Tyrone Tracy served as the clear-cut number 1. Cam Scatterbo did not look great, was mostly a third down guy. Goal line work. So although it didn't look great, Tyrone Tracy clear-cut running back 1 at this point, so feeling good about that. But this New York team did not look great. I think Jackson Dart is going to be starting before the season is over. At least I freaking hope so, especially if you're a Malik Neighbors owner. You really hope so. Heading to the Bengals-Browns, a 17-16 victory for the Bengals, who got absolutely lucky that the Browns rookie kicker absolutely pooped the bed. The Browns should have won this game, and I don't really know what the Bengals were doing offensively in the second half. I went back and watched that game, and it was just a sad state of affairs. Running Chase Brown up the middle when they had no push, getting 2 yards to carry, as you can see. But the encouraging thing is no other running back recorded a rush for the Bengals. So if you're a Chase Brown owner, you absolutely love to see that. He did get in for the score. Surprisingly, only had 2 receptions. We expected him to get more involved. But this offense just could not string anything together. As far as T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, better things are ahead. But this was just an absolute stinker game. Bengals need to look in the mirror and say, what was our offensive plan? Because it was clearly not working. Their offensive line got dominated all day by the Browns front. I know they have Myles Garrett, but I was not expecting the Browns to be able to push around Cincinnati like that. Hopefully we can chalk this up and say this was a fluke for the Cincinnati, but that was really, really poor, especially in the second half out of them. As for the Cleveland side, we have a lot to talk about. Joe Flacco, did his part. He provided all the fantasy value that we, hoped and dreamed of. And that turned into good things for Jerry Jeudy. 5 for 66, had a couple of drops, could have been much better. Good for Harold Fannin, the tight end too, but he earned himself 9 targets, 7 for 63. So I honestly think Harold Fannin is rosterable in most leagues. I think he's going to be, like the Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez, how both guys were rosterable back in the day. I think that'll be the case with Njoku, with Fannin. Obviously, Fannin was the biggest beneficiary this week, but I'm not too worried about David Njoku. I think his usage, snap rate, his target share, I think David Njoku has better days ahead. But Harold Fannin definitely felt some good value there. And then wide receiver 2, Cedric Tillman played well, 5 for 52 and a touchdown on 8 targets. A lot of rosterable receiving options on this Cleveland team, so long as Joe Flacco is the starting quarterback. And then on the ground game, Dylan Sampson was absolutely the star of the show. I know the 12 for 29 doesn't look good. Had the 8 catches on 8 targets for 64 yards. So actually a very solid fantasy day. And he just looked incredibly better than Jerome Ford. I think Jerome Ford is going to get phased out of this offense once Quinshon Judkins comes back. Ford was used sparingly in a third down role. Sampson was the early down guy, with Rocket Sanders being the goal line back, unfortunately. But I think Dylan Sampson's going to be the early down guy. We'll see what Judkins' role is when he comes back. I think he's going to take a little bit to get conditioned back into the swing of things. But Dylan Sampson is absolutely a guy. If he is on waivers in your league, absolutely go pick him up. I think he's going to be very valuable in the coming weeks. I don't think Jerome Ford is rosterable. I would definitely drop Jerome Ford at this point. And I think Flacco's even playable in a super flex league as your QB2. Not going to be the prettiest. He's probably going to have a couple turnovers, but he's going to put up the stats, going to have the pass attempts, as Cleveland will probably be trailing for much of the season. Lots of sneaky fantasy value on this Cleveland team. Although it's not the prettiest, the numbers are the numbers. So I feel like this game could have absolutely had fireworks had Cincinnati figured out on offense. But we got a little bit of the fireworks from Cleveland side. I think that'll continue in the coming weeks. All right, and then for the final morning game, it was the Jacksonville Jaguars 26, Carolina Panthers 10. This game had a little bit of weather at halftime, so it extended their halftime. But let's be honest, never a close game. Panthers looked horrible, but we'll start with the Jaguars. Trevor Lawrence did not look great, I'm going to be honest. 19 for 31, 178 touchdown interception. He had about 3, 4, 5 targets to Brian Thomas Jr. that were easy throws, should have been easy completions that he just missed, or BTJ had a drop, whatever. So I think better things ahead for Brian Thomas Jr., although it's just, you don't like to see that, obviously. He ended with 1 catch on his 7 targets, did get a rushing score, so saved it just ever so slightly. But Brenton Strange was involved early, kind of didn't get any targets in the second half, which you don't love to see, but they were just up by so much. They were kind of running the ball at that point. Travis Hunter getting 8 targets to lead the team. You absolutely love that. Travis Hunter is going to be a startable guy. He only played a few defensive snaps and was a full-time offensive player. So Travis Hunter is definitely going to be a startable receiver here in the coming weeks. On the ground game, a surprise 16 carries for 143 out of Travis Etienne. Kind of good to see. It's back to his 2023 days when he was the RB4. I know people forget that, but he looked good. The vision was good. The speed was good. Tank Bigsby was pretty much an afterthought. So, I might hold on to him for one more week, but if he has the similar usage, probably looking at cutting Tank Bigsby. Unless he gets traded to another NFL team, then, definitely something to look at. Bashal Tutin, pretty much not rosterable right now unless, you have a deep bench or, 14-team league or whatever. But his role is kind of on the back burner so long as Travis Etienne kind of performs like he did. Etienne looked very solid, which was a little surprise. So good to see for Travis Etienne. On the Carolina side of things, Bryce Young looked horrible. I'm going to be honest with you, he looked like rookie season Bryce Young, and it was just tough to see. Although I am very excited about Tedoroa McMillan. Had the 9 targets, which led the team, 5 catches for 68, and it could have been a lot more. There's a couple throws missed by Bryce. So very excited about McMillan. I think Leggette's droppable. Really, I don't think there's another rosterable receiving option in this offense besides T-Mac. As for the ground game, it is very clearly Chuba Hubbard's backfield still. Got the 16 carries, didn't turn it into a whole lot, but did have 3 catches for 32 yards. So Chuba is the only rosterable guy on the ground and kind of held that starting role. Really served as the alpha dog in this rushing attack. We head to the afternoon slate, heading to the Denver Broncos and Tennessee Titans. 20-12 victory for Denver. And Bo Nix did not look fantastic, although Cortland Sutton kind of got his numbers there, 6 for 61 and a touchdown. We kind of knew Troy Franklin was going to serve as that wide receiver too. Ended up getting 6 targets, 4 for 44. So I'd say Franklin definitely rosterable in a deeper league, probably not so much in your 10-12 team league at this point. Evan Ingram, a measly 3 for 21, did get injured at the back of this game, so we will have to check kind of injury reports. But like I said, there are pick-upable tight ends like Juwan Johnson and Harold Fannin, so I wouldn't be too worried. But Evan Ingram did get injured at the end of that game. On the ground, it is the J.K. Dobbins show for now. 63 yards and a touchdown on 16 carries. And we're going to see just how long Sean Payton rides him as the number 1 dog. Although R.J. Harvey did break off a 50-yard run that kind of jump-started their offense. Ended up with 70 rushing yards, which was more than J.K. But Tyler Beatty saw his share of the snaps as well. So R.J. Harvey, obviously rosterable. Keep him on the bench for now. I would not put him in the starting lineup until we see more of a switchover. J.K. Dobbins, with a good matchup, he's playable just due to the volume. Much like he had last season for the Chargers, he's going to get the carries. He's a startable RB2 on certain weeks. As for the Tennessee side of things, obviously things were definitely tough. For Cam Ward, the O-line did him no favors. The receiving core did him no favors, but did not look great. And it's a tough first week matchup with Denver, who's expected to be basically a top defense. So suffered the 6 sacks, partially his fault, partially the line's fault. As we knew, Tony Pollard would get the lion's share of the carries, only turned it into 60 yards. Did get 1 reception for 29 yards early in the game, and he was actually the leading receiver. The thing I would be excited about, though, for Calvin Ridley and Alec Ayumanor owners, led the team with 8 and 7 targets respectively, clearly the wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. I think Ayumanor in a 12-team league is definitely a viable pickup option against a little bit easier of a defense, and serving as that wide receiver 2, he could give some valuable weeks. Calvin Ridley, I'm not too worried about. Got the 8 targets. Obviously, tough matchup against Surtain, and their offense just wasn't really doing much all day. Not really any rosterable options outside of that. Tony Pollard's going to continue to get the lion's share until Spears is off of IR week 4. We'll head to Green Bay in a little bit of a shocking 27-13 victory for the Packers over the Lions. Jordan Love looked very, very solid. Kind of an efficient 16 for 22, 188, and 2 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs obviously got the bulk of his carries on the team, turned it into 66 yards and a touchdown against a tough rush defense out of the Lions. So I think Josh Jacobs more efficient days ahead of him, but obviously great to see the workload. As for the receiving core, you know how kind of spread out this offense is. That's always my worry with the Green Bay receiving core. Dobbs, 2 for 68. Reed, 3 for 45 and a touchdown. Tucker Kraft, 2 for 16 and a touchdown. And you just see how many guys are on that kind of box score for the receivers. It's going to be hard to pinpoint guys week in and week out. I think Tucker Kraft is a startable tight end. But outside of that, these guys are just going to ping pong spike weeks back and forth. And it's going to be really hard to pinpoint. I think this offense as a whole is going to be very good, but they just have so many options, it's going to be hard to pinpoint exactly who's going to be kind of the alpha dog, if they even have one. But Green Bay looks absolutely fantastic. Love to see the offense running as it did. On the Detroit side of things, first game without Ben Johnson was definitely a tough one. And I think even more important without Frank Ragnow. As you can see, nobody could get it going on the ground. Neither Montgomery nor Gibbs averaged more than 2.3 yards per carry. Gibbs did come home, if you're in a PPR league, based off the 10 receptions, but only for 31 yards. Laporta did a very fine job with 6 for 79, led the team in receiving yards by quite a bit. Amon-Ra, only 6 targets, so you don't love to see that, especially in a game they're trailing. A little bit weird, but obviously better things ahead for St. Brown. Jameson Williams, that's the problem. He's going to be a 5 target per game guy. He's going to be the 3rd, 4th option on this offense. So you really need some of those explosive plays for him. He's a tough start for me in redraft right now, especially if you're in a 10-12 team league. I think there's going to be better, kind of safer options, because if Jameson Williams doesn't hit, an explosive play, it's going to be really hard for him to return value in this offense. And then Isaac Tesla had an amazing touchdown catch at the end of the game. I don't think he's really rosterable at this point, but side note, amazing touchdown grab. Jared Goff didn't look great in the first game without Ben Johnson. Heading to the Rams-Texans, a 14-9 victory for Los Angeles. Kind of a defensive stalemate in this one, to be honest. But the single bright spot, as we kind of knew for the Rams, is Puka Nacua, 10 for 130. Came back from getting a cut above his eye, kind of got cleared from a concussion. But Puka is just amazing. If he stays healthy, he could easily be the wide receiver 1 this season. And Devontae's presence only helps him, I think. Devontae earned 8 targets of his own, only turned it into 4 for 51. But Devontae's going to draw some of that coverage away from Puka, who is kind of working inside and out. So Puka, amazing. Devontae, definitely startable. He's going to be the clear wide receiver 2 on this team. No other passing option is relevant at this point. Kyron Williams, going to continue to get the lion's share of the carries, 18 for 66 and a touchdown. It's not going to be efficient out of him, but he's going to get the volume. He's going to get the goal line work. So Kyron Williams, obviously you're starting him. Matthew Stafford, very solid game. Is going to rely on Puka heavily. As for the Texans side of things, very, very tough to see. CJ Stroud did not look great. I know his offensive line has him running around like a chicken with his head cut off, but still did not look fantastic. Surprisingly decent game from Nick Chubb, at least kind of efficiency-wise. 13 carries for 60 yards, definitely more effective than I thought he would be. As for the receivers, this felt like a game Nico Collins should absolutely eat. However, he only got 5 targets, 3 for 25. Obviously a very disappointing game from Mr. Nico Collins. I think better things are ahead. Just kind of a weird fantasy week for those top options across the board. And really spread out targets in this one. But I think with the Christian Kirk hamstring injury, I think Higgins is definitely rosterable for now. Probably keep him on the bench just to see if he kind of can pop and earn himself more than 3 targets. But you expect a little bit more out of Nico Collins in this one. Hopefully the Texans kind of bounce back. They're going to have to figure out that offensive line. But it should be the Nico Collins show moving forward. And then our final afternoon slate game, 17-13 victory for the Niners over the Seahawks. And my Seattle Seahawks should have absolutely won this game. Brock Purdy handed Rick Woolen a 3rd interception in the end zone until this Jake Tonjes guy just absolutely rips it from his hand. It's neither here nor there. We're here to talk fantasy football, not real life football. I know they coincide, but Brock Purdy had some weird, uncharacteristic, bad interceptions, but came home fantasy-wise for you. 277, 2 touchdowns, and the 2 interceptions, like I mentioned. Ricky Pearsall, an amazing 4 for 108. He looked very good on his 7 targets. And then CMC, we thought he was going to be, limited. He got 31 touches in this game, 9 of them being receptions for 73 yards, led the team by a mile in targets. So CMC is going to be a stud running back 1 so long as he stays healthy. Kittle goes 4 for 25 and a touchdown before getting injured in the first half. Hamstring injury, did not return. Looks like he's probably going to be out at least a week, maybe 2. Juwan Jennings left with a shoulder injury. So this depleted San Fran receivers core gets even lighter. We'll have to see who is available for next week. But CMC and Ricky Pearsall will be to the moon if those guys are out. CMC not crazy efficient, but kind of awesome that we saw him take that workload. Brian Robinson able to spell him a little bit. I don't think Brian Robinson is usable, but definitely a solid handcuff in case CMC does get injured. On the Seattle side of things, Darnold looked decent. only ended with 150 yards, with 124 of that going to JSN, the clear-cut wide receiver one on this team. 13 targets of the 23 attempts from Darnold. Obviously an outrageous rate that's not going to sustain, but very promising to see for JSN. Only 3 targets for Cooper Kupp. I expected him to be a little bit more involved, but JSN stole the show in this one. As for the rushing game, Zach Charbonnet looked much, much better than Ken Walker. I know it's just a 1-game sample size, but Charbonnet out-carried Walker, was in on the high leverage situations like third down and whatnot. 47 yards and a touchdown for Charbonnet on the ground. Ken Walker looked pretty inefficient. Behind that same offensive line, Charbonnet is running behind. So definitely a little bit of a high alert for Ken Walker and Ken Walker owners. Definitely, I hope you have Charbonnet as a handcuff. If not, feeling a little worried about Ken Walker at this point. Again, a guy I was not very high on in the offseason because of this Charbonnet dynamic, but definitely high alert for Ken Walker owners. And we will head to the absolute game of the day, the Sunday night game, Bills-Ravens, a 41-40 Bills comeback victory. And this was an absolutely awesome game, made up for all of the lack of fantasy production throughout the day. If you had anyone on these teams, they probably had a good fantasy day. Starting no other than Josh Allen, 394 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, added 2 more scores on the ground. Absolutely fantastic. A little bit of a Keon Coleman coming out party, 8 for 112 and a touchdown. Shakir did his thing, 6 for 64. That's about as Khalil Shakir as it gets. Josh Palmer involved. James Cook, 5 for 58, adding a rushing score to that as well. Dalton Kincaid, a nice 4 for 48 and a touchdown, catching all 4 of his targets. So it looks like Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir are going to be a couple of the main guys in this offense. I predicted a little bit of a Keon Coleman breakout season. This is obviously a great start to that. I don't want to get too high on this and have him drop a dud next week, but I think Keon Coleman is definitely startable in the right situation. And then Shakir is obviously startable. You kind of know you're getting 10 to 12 PPR fantasy points out of him every week. But hey, it's nice to have that floor and that security. Josh Allen, obviously awesome QB numbers there. As for Baltimore, Lamar looked very solid. He was efficient, 209 for 2 touchdowns, added 70 rushing yards and a rushing score as well. And then Derrick Henry, despite having the fumble that basically lost him the game, looked absolutely fantastic. 169 yards and 2 rushing scores. I keep thinking every year that Derrick Henry is going to fall off, and it is yet to happen. So awesome things out of Derrick Henry. And then for the receiver side of things, absolutely amazing game from Zay Flowers. 7 for 143 and a touchdown on 9 targets. Obviously leading the team with the 9 targets. As for the rest of the crew, a dud game out of Mark Andrews, only earning 1 target. I don't think there's another rosterable receiver on this team. I would hold on to Mark Andrews for another week. I know it's easy to get kind of scared off of that, but outside of Zay Flowers, I'm not owning D-Hop. I know he had the amazing touchdown catch, but just not enough opportunity. And then Bateman, I'd hold on to him, probably put him on the bench, but need to see more out of Bateman. But the big 3, Lamar, Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, you're going to be starting these guys every week. So amazing game to finish off the Sunday night football slate. And the final game of the week was a 27-24 comeback victory for the Vikings over the Bears. And J.J. McCarthy, although he started slow, he really turned it on in the second half. You have to admit, there might have been some overreaction happening. He did not look good, even through a pick 6. But with that being said, McCarthy turned it on, rushed for a touchdown, looked pretty mobile, looked athletic, hit both Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones for a touchdown each. So, all things considered, this was a very good first game for J.J. McCarthy. I expect some good things to happen over the course of his rookie season. On the rushing side of things, Jordan Mason looked very, very good carrying the football. Unfortunately, just based off what his role is, he's not going to be a true value, especially in PPR leagues, because he's just not going to get much work in the passing game. But as a rusher of the football, he looked fantastic compared to Aaron Jones in this one. So Jordan Mason is definitely a guy to stow away on the bench in case of an Aaron Jones injury. In the receiving game, Nothing crazy out of Jeddah's, 4 for 44 and a touchdown, but led the team with 7 targets. So all in all positive things for Minnesota despite the slow start. On the Chicago side of things, a little bit different. Caleb Williams did not look very great, although his stat line wasn't terrible. Had 58 rushing yards and a touchdown, 211 and a late passing score to Rome Odunze. He just did not look great, sailing a lot of throws, a lot of inaccurate passes for him. So hopefully Ben Johnson can kind of get him dialed in a little bit. But all in all, Caleb Williams definitely had some inaccuracies. Pretty much the DeAndre Swift show in the rushing game, and he was mostly inefficient, didn't have many holes against this Vikings defense, although the Vikings run D is very, very solid. As for DJ Moore, got hit pretty hard at the end of the game, but did come back in, so that was good to see. Ended with 3 for 70, so nothing great. Only saw 5 targets, not the best. Rome Odunze got 9 targets to lead the team, so, solid showing, ended up getting the score late. He was basically the only one who ended up coming home fantasy-wise. But still, just nothing inspiring about this Chicago offense. Colston Loveland played pretty sparingly, to be honest. Was a big-time split between him and Cole Kmet. So that'll be a wait and see on if Loveland's role kind of expands. Olamide Zaccheaus got 7 targets. So kind of really unclear of what the direction of this Chicago offense is going to be. And it really needs Caleb Williams to improve because they had a lot of opportunities in this game. Missed a clear, touchdown to DJ Moore late in the game. But yeah, riding on the back of Caleb Williams. Hopefully Ben Johnson can right the ship because I know there's a lot of people kind of riding on this Chicago Bears offense. Well, there you have it. There is the Week 1 recap. We have made it. Hopefully better things are to come. I'm sure more fantasy points are going to be scored. It was definitely a low week for fantasy production. Let me know down in the comments if you have any hot takes after week 1, anything you're predicting for the rest of the season, that kind of thing. While you're down there, smash the like button, smash that subscribe button. I really do appreciate the support. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.